About 4 months ago, I made a video about how fat Weird Al was in his Fat music video. Through careful calculations and very detailed research, I was able to determine that he weighed approximately 170,170 pounds, with an astounding width of 15,857 feet and a depth of 6,358 feet. Recently, Al has decided to produce a brand new album after a near 10-year hiatus, and will be recording at Mad Oak Studios near Boston, Massachusetts. This means that he'll have to leave his home in Los Angeles, California to get there, but he can't do it without emotional support. Therefore, in order to leave, he'll have to be accompanied by all of his variations and friends that he sings about in every studio album he's ever created. This of course bears an important question. How are we going to transport this hunk of a man and all of his friends? The answer is simple, my friends. Public transportation. Today, we're going to use transit to move all the Weird Als. Over the last 2 weeks, I've listened to every single song and every single studio album that Weird Al has created in order to ascertain just how many unique Als and characters are in his songs. Through the use of a custom Java program and lots of math, we've determined that we're going to have to move the fat Weird Al himself and his remaining 568 Als and characters as heard in his songs. Now, obtaining transportation for even just his 568 friends is already a difficult enough challenge as it is, but also obtaining transport for Fat Al himself will be an even more extensive challenge. To get them from Los Angeles to Boston, we're going to be submitting a request for bids from bus, plane, and train companies to see who will be willing to undertake this enormous task. Unfortunately, we received very few bids. In fact, we only received 3, but fortunately we got 1 bid for each form of transportation. So, we have some options. Here's who responded. Greyhound responded to the bus bid, Delta responded to the plane bid, and Amtrak responded to the train bid.
Somewhere, there is someone you want to be with. Greyhound can bring you together with low fares every day on every bus. Just walk up and buy your ticket. Be with the ones you want to be with. Go Greyhound and leave the driving to us.
Greyhound is fortunately able to provide us a number of buses, and for consistency they've informed us that they'll be using X345 buses manufactured by Canadian company Prevost. For the 568 Als, we're going to need 11 buses. A lot, but fairly reasonable. The problem then comes with Fat Al himself. He is enormous, far too big for any single bus, so he's going to have to be temporarily chopped up into little bits and shoved into individual buses. A Prevost X345 has a total of 55 seats each, which we're going to remove for the sake of maximizing space. Each bus has a length of 45 feet, a width of 8.4 feet, and a floor to height distance of 6.6 feet. If we multiply all 3 values, we get a volume of 2,494 feet per bus. So, what's the volume of Fat Al? To reiterate, we know that Fat Al has a height of 6 feet, a width of 15,857 feet, and a depth of 6,358 feet. Multiply these together and we get Fat Al's total volume, 604,912,836 feet. He's pretty damn big. So, now that we know the volume of a single X345 and the volume of Fat Al, we can divide these two values and determine that in order to transport Fat Al himself, we're going to need 242,547 buses. Yeah, that's a lot of buses just for Fat Al himself. In total, we're going to need 242,558 buses to transport him and his friends, which frankly is pretty damn unreasonable. Think about it. This is over 200,000 individual buses going across the country at one time. Traffic will slow to a halt, we will spend a ridiculous amount of money on gas, and it will just generally be inefficient for our purposes. Greyhound is out of the running.
At Delta, we could talk about our airplanes, some of the best maintained, most modern birds in the sky, or our schedules, over 1,500 flights a day worldwide, or our flight centers, the airports of the future. But none of that is as important as people. And when it comes to the Delta professionals, the people who make Delta as great as it is, well, one smile is worth 1,000 words. Delta gets you there.
Delta Airlines is now stepping up to the plate, and they're offering the use of their Boeing 767. Nope, wait, we gotta renegotiate. Instead, they're offering the use of their Airbus A330 fleet. The A330 is actually pretty good for our purposes since each plane can carry up to 300 passengers. This means at the very least we'll only need 2 to transport all of Weird Al's friends. The problem arises with Fat Al himself. He's big, greedy, and a high-calorie individual, so we're probably going to need far more than 2. The A330 has a cabin width of 17 feet and 4 inches, a cabin height of 18 feet and 6 inches, and a length of 208 feet. So space is actually quite generous. Fortunately, we still have Fat Al's volume of over 600 million feet. So all we have to do is to get the volume of the plane itself. If we multiply all 3 measurements, we get a total volume of usable space in the plane being 66,570 feet. If we divide that by Fat Al's volume, we can determine that we're going to need 9,086 Airbus A330s from Boeing. Side note, I think that was supposed to say Delta, I'm not sure why it says Boeing. That is a significant decrease from the amount of Greyhounds we would have needed, but the problem now lies with the actual weight capacity of each plane. You see, compared to a land vehicle like a bus or a train, planes can only carry a certain amount of weight before experiencing catastrophic failure. An A330's maximum payload is around 44,000 kilograms, or 97,000 pounds for us Americans. See, this weight maximum is actually pretty great. Recall that Fat Al only weighs 170,170 pounds. Divide that by the amount of planes we need, and there's really only going to be about 18 pounds of weight per plane. He's not really that dense of a guy, literally. The problem with using Delta to get from Los Angeles to Boston is similar to the problem with using buses. Sure, they are reasonable options, and frankly the plane is pretty good. The real problem lies with the fact that we need to use so many with such a limited amount of space. If we're going to need 9,088 A330s in total to get Fat Al and his crew across the country, that's a lot of planes. In fact, there are only around 26,000 aircraft active in the entire world. That's over a third of the aircraft on the planet needed to transport them all across the country. Los Angeles International Airport, or LAX, is pretty big and has 4 runways, which is pretty good. General Edward Lawrence Logan International Airport in Boston, or Logan, is actually a little bit better with 6 runways, so it can actually handle more traffic than is being dispatched from LAX. The problem is then storing all the planes. In a sense, we're going to have a significant amount of congestion in the sky. At least with the buses, they can be parked essentially anywhere. But with planes, it is going to be an extremely long and inefficient process to get everyone to Logan and off the plane. So planes aren't really going to work out. What is left? What else can we do? Is there anyone out there that can help us?
Next time you're planning to fly somewhere, consider going with a carrier who has spent the last 7.5 years rebuilding its entire fleet. A fleet that now offers you some of the newest, most technologically advanced equipment in the world. Not surprisingly, it's also among the most comfortable. Next time, see what a thrill it is to fly on a train.
All aboard! All aboard! All aboard Amtrak!
Yes, folks. Lest we not forget that Amtrak also responded to our bid for train transportation from Los Angeles to Boston. Getting from Los Angeles Union Station, or Union Station for short, to the Governor Michael Dukakis Transportation Center at South Station, or South Station for short, will be an interesting process. Unlike an airline or a bus, a train car and its locomotive, which is collectively referred to as rolling stock, differ greatly. And this is especially true with Amtrak. I spent about 2 days researching Amtrak's own rolling stock, and there were a number of factors to consider to make an informed choice about what we'll need to transport Fat Al and all of his friends. Let's first consider what type of train car to use to actually carry them from Los Angeles to Boston. Our choices range between 5 different types of cars: the Am Fleet, the Horizon, the Viewliner, the Superliner, and the Venture. Let's go through each of these one by one. The Am Fleet. This is predominantly what Amtrak uses across their entire fleet, hence the name, and they can carry up to 84 people individually. It's more than a Greyhound, but not as much as an A330. However, it is considerably smaller than the plane and is much more space efficient in that respect. The Horizon. This is essentially the same as an Am Fleet, but square. There's also not too many of these we can use, unfortunately. In addition, its maximum capacity is 82 people, 2 less than an Am Fleet. Also, compared to an Am Fleet, it is shorter in every dimension, including length, width, and height, though this is just by inches. The Venture. Brand new to the Amtrak fleet and manufactured by Siemens, these are actually the worst choice thus far despite being 4 decades newer than the Am fleets. Their maximum capacity is only 74 people, and like the Horizon, it is smaller or the same in dimensions when compared to the Am fleets. It is slightly taller, however, but not enough to make a difference. the Viewliner. These are especially unique because they're solely used as either dining cars with a kitchen or for bedrooms for sleeping passengers. So automatically these are the worst given their low passenger capacity, being 30. However, as compared to the other 3 cars, it is slightly longer by 0.3 inches, but that really makes no difference at all. The Superliner. Aside from the badass name, these may actually be our best choice. While they're the same in length and width as essentially every other passenger car, it is significantly taller than the rest, being 16 feet and 2 inches in height. While there are multiple models across the Amtrak fleet, we're going to stick with the one that has a capacity of 78 people. So here's our problem. There is a lot to choose from, and each car has their own unique features and benefits. Let's compare volume. Amfleet, volume of 11,285 feet and a capacity of 84. Horizon, volume of 11,050 feet and a capacity of 82. Venture, a volume of 12,495 feet and a capacity of 74. Viewliner, volume of 12,539 feet and a capacity of 30. Superliner, volume of 13,821 feet and a capacity of 78. So, which one is ideal? First, let's consider Fat Al's friends. Recall that we have 568 of them, so if we divide that by the capacity of the highest car, being the Amfleet, we can determine that we'll only need 7, which isn't that bad. In fact, we even have some room left over. Now we get to Fat Al himself. Given that in all of these scenarios we've taken out the seats, we're going to go with the Superliners as they have the most volume. Now, keep in mind, these are actually 2 stories, so we're going to remove the floor for maximum space. So, the answer you've all been waiting for. How many Superliners are we going to need to transport Fat Al? Well, we divide Fat Al's volume of 604,912,836 feet by the Superliner's volume of 13,831 feet, we are going to need 43,768 Superliners. Not as bad as the Greyhounds, but nowhere near as good as the A330s. But hold on a second, hold your horses. We're not done. Consider a train. Train can't move by itself. Train need power. So what do train need? Well,
oh, I know what the ladies like.
Locomotives. Let's consider the weight of all the train cars. An individual Superliner weighs 174,000 pounds at maximum, and we're going to use this measurement assuming the worst case scenario, which multiplied by the amount we're using means we're hauling 7,615,632,000 pounds of weight, which will round to 7,600,000,000. 7 Amfleets weigh just under 1,000,000 pounds, which given the weight of the Superliners will just be assumed. So, our grand total of weight will be rounded to 7,650,000,000 for generosity. So, how do we carry over 7 billion pounds across the country? Let's take a look at Amtrak's locomotives. Given that this train will navigate across the entire country, there won't be overhead power lines, so we can't consider any electric trains of higher power, meaning we'll have to choose from a small selection of diesel locomotives. Let's take a look at each one. The GE-832BWH, or simply known as the Dash 8. This vehicle produces around 3,200 horsepower with a maximum speed of 103 miles per hour. Most importantly, it has a continuous tractive effort of 38,500 pounds of force at 26 miles per hour. The General Electric Genesis, or simply known as the GE Genesis. This locomotive is newer than the Dash 8 and has a UIC of Bobo? I don't know what that means. This is the locomotive predominantly used in Amtrak's fleet as of 2024, and for the sake of clarity, we're going to be referencing the P40DC model, which has a power output of 4,000 horsepower, a maximum speed of 103 miles per hour, and a continuous tractive effort of 38,000 pounds of force at 38 miles per hour. Finally, the Siemens Charger. This is Amtrak's newest diesel locomotive, and has the highest maximum speed at 125 miles per hour, regardless of model. In this scenario, we'll be using the ALC42, which has the highest power output at 4,200 horsepower with a continuous tractive effort of 62,000 pounds of force, making the ALC42 Charger the ideal choice to haul our train. Recall the total weight we're hauling, assuming it's all on a flat grade and there are no upward or downward inclines, is exactly the estimated 7,650,000,000 pounds with no forces acting upon or against it besides the locomotive itself. Now, full disclosure, the math I'm about to do is not 100% accurate given the total amount a locomotive can pull is dependent on way too many factors. I spent hours on forums trying to figure out what was the best way to accurately determine it, and there's not really an easy way of doing that. But this is a world where we can just allocate nearly 44,000 train cars, so this shouldn't be a problem. So yes, trains do not have a set amount they can pull. However, with an assumed coefficient of friction of 0.3 multiplied by the weight of the train cars, we'll need a total tractive effort of 2,295,000,000 pounds. The math is easier now. Let's divide that by the tractive effort of the ALC42 and we get to a rounded value of 37,017 locomotives. That is nearly the amount of actual superliners we have hitched to this train, which does beg the question, how long is this thing? Well, a Siemens ALC-42 is 71 feet long, whereas a superliner is 85 feet long. Multiply these measurements by the totals we have and combine them, and we get a total length of 6,366,995 feet, or 1,205 miles. Now that is a pretty insane length, and for reference, the United States itself is 2,800 miles from coast to coast, meaning that this train is only 200 miles off from being half the width of the whole goddamn country. So what does this mean for Fat Al and his funny friends? Well, we've already determined that Greyhound is out of the running given the sheer amount of buses required to transport everyone. And unfortunately, given the sheer length of the train and the amount of rolling stock needed, we're also going to take Amtrak out of the race. This leaves Delta as the sole survivor of the bid, and thus, they are crowned the champion. Not sponsored. Now you know. If you want to transport an absolutely big and round, fat Weird Al and all of his friends, you're gonna need 9,088 Airbus A330s chartered through Delta. Again, not sponsored. However, I'm actually quite curious. What do you think? Would you propose a different type of bus, a different model of plane, or a different rolling stock? Like, genuinely, I am really curious. So if you're a nerd, if you're a transport nerd, tell me, what did I do wrong? What can I do better? What would be better to transport Fat Al and all of his friends? Is there some other type of transportation, maybe a Zeppelin or something like that? Let me know. I really am genuinely curious. So please leave a comment below. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe. Peace out, folks.